Good afternoon, everybody. I'd firstly just like to begin by just thanking Rosemary Lucero for inviting me here. It's an absolute honour and a privilege to be here today. Over the years, a few of us have celebrated World Peace Day, September 21st, and sometimes it can be quite challenging to get other people to join in. So this is the greatest number of people I've seen in Ireland celebrating World Peace Day on the 21st of September, so I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Okay, what I'd like to begin with is, a number of years ago I came across a Native American peace prayer, and a few lines from it resonated quite deeply with me. I have 4 young children. They were born in 5 years, and I'm very passionate, as many of us are in this room, I'm sure, about sowing seeds of peace in the next generation. And I thought this little prayer from the Native Americans captured a lot of certainly what I'd like to do in my life, and it is this. There's another bit before it. Spirit of our ancestors, give us the wisdom to teach our children to love, to respect, and to be kind to one another, so that they may grow with peace in mind. Now, this, as you probably know, this is a Native American flute, so I'm going to play a short tune on it just to begin the talk, and then I'll talk more about the Peace Cloth project and maybe another story or two, who knows, we'll see where we go. The way I play this flute is just as it comes to me in this moment in time. So it's not a tune I've practiced or anything like that. It's simply just allowing whatever tune to come out right now. So it's a unique tune for the occasion. So enjoy it. Sit back, relax, and just enjoy the moment. Sinead. Okay, it was back in October 2004. The war was ravaging in Iraq at the time. There was a lot of propaganda about that it was a Christian-Muslim war, and any other groups that were involved in it as well. And I happened to be going to the US for a workshop. And we had started this Peace Cloth idea, which is basically about promoting peace in schools. It's as simple as that. Promoting peace to children and hopefully sowing a lot of seeds there. So when we were in the States, there was quite a number of people gathered. So I thought, wouldn't it be great at that moment in time when all we were hearing about was about the bombing and all sorts going on in Iraq, to offer a gift from the US to Iraq of a peace cloth. So a number of us were there that evening, as I say. We got loads of paint and all sorts, and things for washing hands, etc., etc. And we got this massive, big, long cloth. And basically, anybody who was there was invited to dip their hand in the paint and put it on the cloth with, their intentions, their wishes for peace. And the intention of the evening was that somehow it would get to the people, particularly the children in Iraq. Now, that was October 2004, and personally, I had absolutely no idea how it would get there. However, we held on to that intention, and when I returned from the US, I brought the cloth with me, hoping that, somewhere along the way I'd meet someone over here who maybe happened to be going to Iraq at the time and would bring the cloth. But obviously I never knew. But one thing I think sometimes that can limit what we want to achieve, whether it's as a humanity or individually, is trying to figure out how things are going to work before they've actually worked. Because sometimes we've got to trust a lot more, and we've got to trust the intelligence of the universe that we're all a part of, but that knows that every spring, the daffodils are going to blossom, in autumn the leaves are going to fall off the trees, and so on. So this intelligence is at work in our lives, but sometimes we get so caught up in trying to force things that we're not tuning into it and allowing it to unfold in a perfection that perhaps we can't manifest ourselves. So anyway, that was back in October 2004. Now, this was the very first bit of the peace cloth that we created, just to show it to you here. It's very simple. I'm sure you've seen similar sort of things before. There's children's hands on it, and little map of Ireland there, peace on earth, and so on. So that was the idea. This is a little small one. This was the very first seed of it. And, well, we'll leave it here, perhaps. Of course, an interesting thing happened then when I began to trust the universe a little bit more. And I got a call from someone in the US a few months later now. So a few months had passed, remember, nothing had happened. And every now and again, the thought would come into my head, and it's saying, Sean, you never got that cloth to Iraq. What could I do? So you just wait. So I get this call from the US. Someone over there has come across an organization called Operation Iraqi Children, which were a charity. And they said they sometimes send planes over into Baghdad, and they were willing to take the peace cloth. So this was fantastic news. And this was about the beginning of 2005 then. So the cloth we had, as I said, I brought it home to Ireland. So what we decided to do is we brought in loads of Irish people as well. So it wasn't only going to be coming from the US, it's also going to be coming from Ireland. So loads of people just basically came into our kitchen one afternoon, got loads of paint again, put loads of handprints on, put the intentions of peace on it to go back to the US. So we sent it back to the US, and I also sent with it a letter to the US Marines because I reckoned it was going to go to them some way, and it would have to be from them that the cloth would come. At least that was my feeling at the time. So I wrote a letter to the US Marines, and basically just as a well, in fact, what I'll do is I'll actually read out some of the letter, because I have it here in my book, The Piper's Tales. I'll just read a little bit out of it. And believe it or not, I've only just got glasses. And I had to remember to bring them up here today because I can't see it as well anymore. Anyway. Yeah, I'll just read out this paragraph. This is the third paragraph. As I said, it was quite general, and I just addressed it to the US Marines. And it says, each morning on our planet, the sun rises, and each night it sets. We have much to be grateful for. If one day it decided not to rise, we could all die. We would all die. Sometimes it's interesting to realize that the sun shines on everyone and everything on our planet. No matter who we are, no matter where we are, no matter what religion we are, no matter what culture we are, no matter what we have or have not done, the sun will always shine on us. Metaphorically speaking, it is a beautiful example of pure, unconditional love. If, as a race, we could embrace this simple, loving wisdom, maybe there would be no need for any wars. So, obviously, that's an emotional little letter there. Now, I sent it off to America. Now, before I continue with that story, I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about the cloth and what the idea behind it was. It basically evolved anyway, and I suppose it evolved into, because the cloths were gathering we basically went into schools to ask them to create a cloth, and basically my attic was getting full with peace cloths. So I needed to do something. So what we decided to do, which was sort of the idea with the US, Ireland, Iraqi one, is that if schools from different sides of conflicts could exchange them as gifts to each other, and then perhaps hang them in the school and something like that. So that's what we did, and like we've had them go from Catholic schools in Northern Ireland to Protestant schools in the south and all that sort of thing, or to any schools around Dublin, everywhere, just to exchange them as a token gesture of peace. And I have to say that some of the cloths, like as I say, they're spread out now around wherever they are, but some of them are absolutely beautiful. Beautiful time and artistry and all sorts went into creating a lot of them. But most importantly, the feelings of peace. As one person said, you know, it's not about creating peace at all that we really need to concern ourselves with. It's just like what happened to me earlier on today. I'm driving along and I get a text to say the internet has gone down and the broadband and the phone is gone at home, you know? So when these little things happen to us in life, we may not have control over them, but we always have control over the response. And in that really lies well, in my understanding anyway, lies the secret to a lot of peace. It starts and ends really with each one of us. And on this day, I think everyone in this room can go to sleep tonight and say, yes, today the world is a more peaceful place because of the choices that everybody in this room has made today in the gesture of simply showing up. And that perhaps is one of the toughest things of all, just showing up in the name of a greater world and a greater humanity for all. So, but ultimately, in the everyday life, it's about how we react when someone takes our car park, when someone bumps our car, when someone leaves a message on the phone and you can't pick up their number or whatever. Ultimately, it's about maintaining a level of peace within our everyday life, because that invisible energy of peace goes out to everybody else and touches them in ways that perhaps we will never know, but we don't need to know. We just need to know that it was our intention to do that and to hold on to it. Okay, so anyway, coming back to the story in Iraq. Let me just flick on here a bit now, we get up. Yeah. Oh yes, well, a couple other points I just wanted to make. You know, another interesting point when I was in the States was that when I went into classrooms piping and making the peace cloth and that, there was a huge amount of children there whose parents were actually in the war at the time. You know, sometimes we think Ireland has difficulties, but a lot of the children over there, their parents are at war, which is, well, something to reflect on sometimes, and gives us more reason to carry on the mission for world peace. Okay, so the Children's Peace Cloth, this was a little example of one in Northern Ireland, just outside of Derry. Again, it was a beautiful peace cloth created in a tiny little school there a few years ago now. And an interesting little thing happened that day. That weekend I was in Newry and I was on a yoga weekend. And the guy who was doing the weekend, a guy called Drew Mansukh Patel from the Life Foundation, who also do fantastic work for peace with the World Peace Flame, had set himself a goal of planting 1 million trees around the world. Small little goal like that, you know. And he happened to bring a few little trees with him to give us. And that morning I arrived in this little school in Derry. I had the little tree in the back of my car. So I decided when I go in and tell them the stories to give them the tree. And then when I got in and gave them the tree, they also said to me that they were going up, this was a Catholic school, they were going up to the next school up the road a bit, which was a Protestant school, for a peace get-together that morning. And they were taking the tree with them to plant it. So it's lovely when things like that happen. As I said, it's just simply just about showing up most of the time. And the universe will look after the rest if we trust it. Okay, so again, the peace cloth. Remember, it was going on for months and months. I went back to the US to this Operation Iraqi Children, and we never heard anything. Months and months passed, never heard a word. But again, it was just, I simply said to myself, well, you know, it's not going to happen according to my agenda. It's not going to happen according to my schedule. I can set my deadline and say, well, if it's not there by the end of the June, we'll give up. But it's not about that. It's about just trusting and allowing it to happen in its own good time. And as St. Augustine said, faith is to believe in what you do not yet see. And the reward for that faith is to see what you believe. So, one day, Christmas 2005, so it was a year and a half later, literally about 3 days before Christmas. That was the best Christmas gift I ever got in my life. I got an email from a Captain Jason Simmons from United States Air Force to say he had been rummaging around at Baghdad airport and he found the peace cloth that was in with a lot of other stuff, whatever. And what I'd like to do is read out the letter that or the email that he sent me that morning. And you know, where I got the idea of even writing to the Marines in the first place was from another guy who used to write to the British Army in Bosnia. And he used to ask them to bring over peace flames in their bombers and put them in Bosnia and Kosovo and places like that. And they were they were delighted to help. Sometimes we think these doors are closed on us because there's different agendas at work, but we're all humans. And it's amazing when we follow our heart, how we can connect with other people's heart, and no matter what circumstances or what their past has been, ultimately within us all there is goodness. So this is the email he sent me. Short little email. He said, yesterday I went to a team to deliver medical attention, medical supplies, school supplies, clothes, and some candy for kids in a village just outside Baghdad. It was great knowing I was helping out, and I was surprised when I found your banner. I had some children hold it and explain to them what it was and the words at the top, reaffirming the idea of what peace means to us and them. Most of the children don't understand English, but they are smart and understand almost everything I was saying, and were happy just to be in the picture. We helped about 50 folks yesterday, and it was a great experience. That deserves a round of applause, I think. Anyway, that's the Captain Jason Simmons, that spontaneous applause, okay? Anyway, would you like to see the picture of those kids holding it? Because this was the email. He sent me that picture of himself there, and then he sent me this picture. And that was the cloth that made it to Iraq a year and a half after that weekend in 2004. And again, it's just to remind ourselves, I suppose, you know, the reason why the story kept on coming to me, so I decided I'd tell this one today, that it is, you have to think of the symbolism of something like this when there's a war going on in a country. That many of, whatever side it is, are seeing the other side blowing them to bits, or perhaps their own people, in some cases, blowing them to bits. Yet amongst, you know, all that turmoil and destruction and death, you know, that those small children saw this little gesture from a captain in the United States Air Force, which perhaps they'll remember for the rest of their life, and perhaps they will be the peace leaders in Iraq someday. Who knows? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We never know. But because it was all done in the cause of peace and with a loving intention, it can make a huge difference for everybody. Well, another story that kept on coming into my head for the last hour when I was sitting there waiting was a story I heard about 3 or 4 years ago. John Michael Talbot, a singing priest guy, who I'd never even heard of up to only a few years ago. And I'm walking through Bray High Street, and I see that there's a priest singing there that night. And it happened to be a very stressful week for me. It's just everything was going on, and I was just feeling really stressed, So I thought, well, that could be the perfect antidote now for me this evening. So I went in and I sat down in the Holy Redeemer Church there in Bray. And basically there was, the place was packed. I couldn't believe it. I'd never heard of this guy, and the place was packed. And the first thing he said to us was, simply relax, sit down, enjoy the evening. You don't have to do anything. And always remember, switch off your mobile phones. But it's your response that matters. Okay. Anyway, he's there that evening, and he told this story. Now, I'm going to tell the story as I heard it that night, but I've since researched it, so what I heard that night was a little bit different than the real thing. But the point of the story and what it tells us I find fantastic, and I'm sure you will too. Basically, there was this brother Charles decided it was his mission to convert a small town somewhere in the world, I think, into being Christians. So he went over to this town, and he decided to live in a cave. And for year after year after year, he was praying and praying and praying that these people in the town would convert to Christians. Now, he could have been saying converting them to Islam or converting them to Jainism or Zoroastrian. It really doesn't matter which religion. But anyway, for years and years and years, he was trying to convert. And at the end of 20 years, he got nowhere. Not one person in that town was converted to Christianity. So he was a little bit frustrated, And one night he just yelled up to God, and he said, God. He said, I've been here for 20 years. I've prayed. I've been really good. And not one person in this town has converted to Christianity. And next minute he hears this voice say to him, it's not about the numbers. It's about your faithfulness. Now, in organising an event like today, like Rosemary and the board have done, it takes a huge amount of faith. A huge amount of faith and dedication. And sometimes, just before we're about to shine this fantastic light on the world, sometimes the path doesn't go exactly as planned. It's like as if the universe or whoever throws in something that could knock the whole thing off course. And it's that sometimes when our muscles, if you like, our faith can be really tested. And when I came here today and to see all these people, as I said at the beginning, it's just absolutely fantastic. And I don't know the names of everybody, I only really know Rosemary. And I have to say that it's an absolute fantastic demonstration of faith in a greater world for us all, and someone and a board who are totally dedicated to the bigger picture on this planet. And what I'd like to do now to finish off is to play a piece on my bagpipes. And well, you'll know the tune. It's called Raglan Road, The Dawning of the Day. And I'm going to dedicate it to Rosemary's father, who passed away last week, Bernardo Lucero. My own belief, and I've played this tune many, many funerals for years, for all different walks of life, many, many different people in many countries, that the spirit lives on. There's no question about it. The spirit lives on. So this is dedicated to Rosemary and everybody else who helped this event happen today. Because like the Brother Charles story, after researching him on the internet, he was shot, he was murdered eventually. Someone came in, he had nothing to give them, so they killed him. And a number of years later, someone was walking near the cave and they found his diaries. And they were full of wisdom. And after his name is Brother Charles Foucault, and actually it was at the turn of the last century that he was around this planet. I searched it on the internet. There's 500 institutes around the world that say they follow a lot of his principles. The same thing we're doing here today, sowing seeds, we never know how far they go. They're ripples that go out there for goodness. So thank you very much. I'll finish now. My name's Sean Kelly, and it's been an absolute honour. I'll just play this tune for Rosemary's father, Bernardo, and for Rosemary and all the crew and everybody else here today. Thank you very much indeed.